Missoula.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. It's time for Montana's only daily sports talk show, Nuanez Now. Watch the show statewide on SWX Montana Television.
I like football!
Now here's your host, Coulter Nuanez.
Well, it was a scorcher, but I somehow survived, and now here we are. We finally arrived. It's about to be football time. What's up, everybody? Welcome in. Nuanez Now, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television, and the ESPN MT app. I'm Coulter Nuanez. We are coming to you through the Grizzly Disposal studio here at the Missoula Broadcasting Company. Grizzly Disposal has construction roll-off boxes for your construction project. They can get them to you within 24 hours. Don't wait days or even weeks. Just give Grizzly Disposal a call, 406-541-7171. Grizzly Disposal, the only bears that should be in your garbage. Have you been around, well, the state of Montana the last couple of weeks? It's been scorching hot. The weekend before this last one, I was in Great Falls for a wedding, which was very fun, but also incredibly hot. It was 103 degrees when we got out of the car at 5:30 for a 6 o'clock wedding, so pretty crazy. I know that there was speculation that it got to 118 degrees in Forsyth. That turns out being a little bit of a tall tale, but it still hit 113 in Forsyth. It was over 105 all over eastern Montana 2 weeks ago. And this last weekend, so comparably not quite as hot, but still, it was plenty hot, and I was playing at a 3-day golf extravaganza at the Missoula Country Club because of how many teams there are in the tournament and how the format of the tournament's played under, especially on Friday, and the fact that there's a derby intermittently with a bunch of other stuff going on. It ends up being between like 8 and 11 hours a day of golf on the golf course, which, how can you complain being on a beautiful track like the Country Club and hanging out in the middle of summer in Montana? It's hard to complain. But, man, it was so hot. It was brutally hot. I mean, this was a task to just be able to stay upright. I mean, we must have drank 3 gallons of water on Thursday during our 2 o'clock round. But I somehow survived. We played all right. It was fun, as always. And so often, though, this tournament that I play in, because I played it, I think, 8 years in a row now, it rolls straight into media days. And usually I gotta then, I get home Saturday, try to rest and recover a little bit, and then I'm off rolling to the Big Sky Kickoff. Well, this year they're staggered. Big Sky Kickoff media days is not till this next weekend. So I actually had a chance to just have some R&R at home yesterday. And what a great sports day. I had a great day overall yesterday. Had pancakes with my son, went to the park, played around, then we came home and busted out all our chores while we had the British Open on, then watched the stretch run. How about Ryan Fox? We're getting to that here in just a quick minute. Then had some lunch, and bam, we're right into the World Cup final. And then we went to the river and took a swim before dinner and had some steaks last night for dinner. So pretty exquisite Sunday night to cap the weekend. And it was a great little reset now because here we are. I'm back at it for full week this week, and we've had a couple short weeks here lately. That's just kind of how it goes in July. Try to get some time off when it's the slowest of the slow in the sports world. But now we're back into it, and there's tons of stuff to talk about. We have that British Open. We have that World Cup final. We also have plenty to talk about from the football realm. The Big Sky Conference preseason polls dropped today. No surprises, but certainly we'll get into that. The Montana Mile and the Montana 100 happened over the weekend as well, so we'll go through that. Also, an unbelievable effort on the international stage of World Track and Field. Josh Kerr of Great Britain, he's been in the midst of this deal called Project 222. That is the quest to run a mile in 222 seconds. That equates to 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Well, Josh Kerr did that. He ran 3:42 and some change to break a world record that stood for 27 years. So we'll go through some of that and the historic nature of that as well. Also, we got plenty to talk about when it comes to national awards, preseason All-Americans, and the Big Sky Conference preseason polls. I also have a bone to pick about the Buck Buchanan watch list, which I know is not completely unflexible, but it's certainly one that I think needs a little bit of an alteration. So we'll get into that a little bit in hour number 2 as well. And also, there's more than just one bona fide MMA star out of the state of Montana. Everybody knows about Sugar Sean O'Malley from Helena. But we've had a young man on this show a couple times, and I'm going to effort him again. His name's Kai Stewart. He's a Great Falls native, and he is one of the up-and-coming bare-knuckle fighters in the world. And he has a cool event coming up at Fenway Park. So we'll get into some of that a little later on. And also Lance Gibson, who's a Great Falls kid. He fought in the UFC this last weekend. So there's several fighters from the state of Montana. And I think that the fact that there's multiple professionals rising through the ranks out of this state, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think Montana has great athletes, but I think there's a higher chance that we're going to produce professional MMA fighters, skiers, and bull riders than it is we're going to produce professional basketball players. It's just the sort of the tone of the attitude and makeup of the state of Montana. So we'll get to some of that a little later on here in the show, too. But hope you had a great weekend. Hope you had a great start to your week. If you're out in western Montana, I actually don't have a definitive weather report for you in terms of why there's so much smoke in the valley, but there certainly is. So that's been not that great. I hope that's a finite scenario, because when the smoke settles in the Missoula Valley, it's brutal. It hurts. It messes you up. But regardless, it's been a fun summer. I'm fully ready to roll into football. It's crazy because the older you get, the busier you get. I feel like that's just the life that everybody lives. And then all of a sudden you get less and less busy, and then you're bored, right? Or I don't know if you actually do get bored. Like I saw a good friend of mine at actually a funeral, which was a bummer. I guess it's one of my good friend's fathers, but he had recently retired, and I asked him, I said, how's it going? Are you bored yet? And he said, no, man, if you know how to read, you'll never get bored. I thought that was great advice. He said, when you're retired, if you have stuff going on, you got some hobbies, and you like to read, you're not going to ever be bored. So I thought that was great advice and also great solace in thinking about that time in your life. But anyways, we usually roll, like my summer is usually just a 6-week deal, right? In terms of like the time I have a little bit of extra flexibility. Memorial Day weekend is usually when all the state high school track and field and spring sport championships are. And then you have a couple hanger-on events like the National Finals Rodeo and Collegiate National Track Championships. But mostly there's not a ton of events other than all-star football and basketball games that you're covering for then that first 4 weeks of June, and then the 4th of July and the weekend after that. So that's kind of when I have my summer break. That usually then rolls into this member guest I played in. But man, from the E.B. Craney Awards to 2 funerals of men that I had known most of my life, to the Montana Pro Football Hall of Fame, then into the 4th of July, and a wedding, 2 weddings, I guess. And then into the golf tournament, and now into the Big Sky Kickoff. It's been like, man, I did not have a single weekend in my quote-unquote summer that was open. So it's been fun. It's been a whirlwind. I actually wish I was staying home this weekend, too. But I am excited for Media Day. So we'll have plenty of football talk for you each and every day here on Nuanez Now. I am going to basically we're going to prepare my questions for Brent Vegan and Bobby Kennedy, the respective head coaches for the Cats and the Grizz. We're going to prepare those for you just in real time here on the radio, and just get into, like, what am I going to ask Brent Vegan? Okay, I'll give you one of my questions, and we'll talk it out for a little while. What am I going to ask Bobby Kennedy? I'll give you one of my questions. We'll talk it out for a while. And it should just be sort of an ebb and flow. Maybe we'll get to 2 or 3 questions in the scope of a segment. Maybe it's just 1 each day. We'll see. But basically, we're going to just that'll help lead us to what I want to talk about for the Grizz and the Cats at this Big Sky Kickoff. We're going over actually a day earlier than we usually do. So we'll actually have some real deal one-on-ones. So very much looking forward to that. We're going to have just an opportunity to sit down with well, I guess whoever we choose, whoever we effort, But usually it's like this whole media room, and you can get some good stuff, but it's also like this rapid fire, and the sound is not great because you got all these different people doing all these different interviews. So we're going on Sunday. We're actually going over Saturday night so that we can have Sunday to just bust out as many one-on-one interviews as we can. We prepared a list of 14 subjects. So we'll have all that for you all throughout the month of August. So this is when it really starts rolling, and I'm excited about it, no doubt. But certainly it was a fun end of the weekend, and then it was great then to have a day to kick it while also hanging out with the fam, while also watching two great sporting events. Nuanez Now 1029 ESPN Radio. You want to stream it, you always can, 1029ESPN.com. You can also stream us on YouTube. You can also stream us on Facebook, and you can also find us on Twitch. But the British Open is also always one of the it's just such a different viewing experience than the other majors because of the location. So this thing's winding down. You know, it's getting over at 11 o'clock in the morning, Mountain Standard Time. So that's a lot different than 4 or 5 o'clock at night. Usually with the other majors, what I try to do on a Sunday is record it, put my phone away, spend time with my family, don't get any spoiler alerts, and then just hammer through the round in about an hour and a half, fast forward, or maybe 2 hours, whatever, fast forward the commercials, rather than sitting there watching the whole 4.5 hours. Well, when it's in the morning, I actually was just doing a whole bunch of chores intermittently, but you're sitting there thinking all sorts of stuff. You're sitting there thinking, can Sam Burns hang on, or is he going to have another rough Sunday at a major? And what's the effect of that going to be on his psyche, both contemporarily and moving forward? For those that remember, he was in the mix of the Masters and the U.S. Open this year, and then let it all kind of slip away on him. Did not play his best on Sunday in either of those tournaments, and he was the Sunday leader at the Open Championship this last weekend at Royal Birkdale in England. And again, he gave some back right away, and that sort of opened the door. But you're sitting there thinking, okay, can Sam Burns hang on? Then you're sitting there thinking, okay, what if one of the premier guys, one of the stars, can they make a charge? Tommy Fleetwood is there, on his home course. Or, and I don't know if Royal Birkdale is actually his home course, but he's in his home city. He's in his homeland. He's one of the betting favorites. And, he's still looking for that elusive first major. And he's certainly one of the best guys that has that title. Well, they're thinking, well, what about Scottie Scheffler? Can he make a charge? He's always in the mix. Can he make a charge down the stretch? What about Bryson DeChambeau, who came into the mix on Sunday, in the top 10? And then you had some of the other guys that were sort of, and then Cam Young. He fires a final round 64, and he's actually the leader in the clubhouse when some of the guys in the final two groups were just teeing off. So that was also another interesting deal. And then you had some of the top Asian golfers who played super well throughout the week. Siwoo Kim, who ended up finishing sixth, but he was absolutely in the mix coming down the stretch. He shot a final round 72 to sort of fade, but still placed in the top 10. Hideki Matsuyama went 67 on Friday and Saturday, so he was firmly in the mix coming into Sunday as well. Chris Gotterup was a guy that hung around and then shot a final round 67 to get himself into the top 20. But none of that played out. It was not about anybody hanging on, or Cam Young's late charge, or Scottie Scheffler with a late rally, or any of the names we've become so accustomed to seeing be in contention. Instead, it was about this completely unlikely winner. And this ended up being the most completely unlikely winner for the second time in a major championship during this major season. We talked about Aaron Rai after he won the PGA Championship, and he had all sorts of quirks in his game, whether it was the head covers on his clubs, or the fact that he wears two gloves, or the fact that he's a guy that has been not really in the conversation for a long time, but has sort of started coming along. And that was a real feel-good story, but it also added another name to the mix of guys right now that play professional golf that are going to, it's hard. It's in fact impossible to say that Aaron Rai is not a guy that's good enough to win a major when he wins a major. Well, now guess what? Ryan Fox is also in that mix, and the list continues to grow. There must be 36 guys right now on the PGA Tour that have won majors that now deserve to be in the conversation as a guy that could win a major. And that's pretty cool. Some would argue it's not great for golf. Maybe the layman fans who only tune in 3-4 times a year and they just watch the Masters and the U.S. Open and the British Open, they would probably argue that to have Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson and then everybody else is probably better for the overall game, the game at large. But as somebody that loves golf and loves watching golf often, I love that there's so many guys that are in the mix, right? I mean, when you look down the leaderboard and you see guys like Xander Schauffele, former major champion, former British Open champion. You see a guy like Brooks Koepka, who's a multiple-time major champion. You see guys like J.J. Spaun, who won a major championship, Rory McIlroy, Jon Rahm, and these guys are fighting to get in the top 50. Justin Thomas finished 65th. Like, when you have that quality of golfer that's in the middle, it shows you how many great golfers there are right now, and I think it's really good for the sport. I'm just wondering who's going to reach up and seize it. Scottie Scheffler has been the guy lately. Rory McIlroy, of course, with his back-to-back Masters. Or maybe there won't be a guy that just reaches up and seizes it and becomes the dominant guy of his generation. It's hard to argue that's not Scottie Scheffler, but the fact that there's so many other guys that can rise up and take it from him during a given major is pretty impressive. I said this stat earlier, on the show last week. Scottie Scheffler has been the outright betting favorite in 15 consecutive majors. That's great. The fact that he's won 5 out of those 15 is, 4, because he won his first major before he became the betting favorite. But the fact that he's basically winning 1/4 of the majors is really impressive, right? And 1/4 of the majors in a 4-year span is pretty impressive. But on the other hand, the fact that there's now another guy, Ryan Fox, who is in that mix as a major champion and a guy who can win a major, it's pretty impressive. Nuanez Now 102.9 ESPN Radio. If you haven't seen the way that this went down, Fox just got absolutely sizzling on Saturday. Fired a third-round 62. That helped him overcome being 2 over on Friday and then entering the weekend at just even par. The 62 got him to 8 under, and then he rode the roller coaster a little bit down the stretch, but he figured out a way to, well, not figured out. He hit one absolutely dead on 18, and you're watching this guy after he has just gone shot making after shot making, 15, 16, and 17, overcoming the perils of what makes Royal Birkdale so difficult. And then on 18, he hits one dead, and he rolls in a 12-foot putt, 15-foot putt. I don't know how long it was. But if you haven't seen the highlight of this guy was in the ultimate flow state. This guy was walking on cloud 9. When he hit that approach shot on 18, he was just absolutely locked in the zone. And he walks up to the green, and he hardly even lines it up. He marks it. One turn of the ball, one practice putt stroke, no pressure whatsoever, even though there's all the pressure in the world on him, and bam, hits a $3.2 million putt to walk off with the British Open Championship for his first major. What an unbelievable story by Ryan Fox. If you have never heard of Ryan Fox, well, nobody has. Ryan Fox is from New Zealand. He's 39 years old. He didn't even get on the PGA Tour until he was in his mid-30s. He won multiple times on the DP World Tour while he was living in New Zealand. But then his family decided just last year that they were going to make this a real pursuit for him. And so they moved to America and go all in on him being a PGA touring professional. Well, he wins one other time this year, and then he puts it all together at the Open. And at 39, I think he's the second oldest first-time major winner in the history of golf, which is pretty crazy when you consider it. But also just so cool for him. Like, what an awesome story. The oldest guy to ever win a major, period, is Phil Mickelson. Won the PGA Championship when he was 50. That was back in 2021. We've had other major champions when they're in their 40s. Jack Nicklaus won the Masters as late as 46. Hill Irwin won the U.S. Open when he was 45. Old Tom Morris, way back in 1867, is the oldest British Open winner. But the fact that Ryan Fox did this and to bet on himself and have this come to fruition is a pretty cool deal. And I don't know what the sustainability of it is, but if he plays like he did yesterday, he's going to be in the mix for a long time. And you have to wonder if, like, the full dedication to this, like, you have to have your tour card. But I don't know if people realize this part about the PGA Tour. It's very much like rodeo, where when you're touring around, like, if you play for the Lakers, they have a charter flight. So they're taking you wherever you need to go to compete in your games. When you're on the PGA Tour, you have your tour card. And there's certainly like entry exemptions and stuff like that, but mostly you or your agent are your own travel agent. Like, you are booking your own travel. You're going to the places you want to go. And there's the guys that get, again, exemptions. There's the guys that have all the sponsorships, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not like they're just writing the check, but essentially they are. But if you're a guy that's a middling guy like Ryan Fox, you'll play a tournament sometimes, maybe you won't, just depending on what your budget's like. How much have you won this year? Do you have enough money in the coffers to keep on traveling around? Are you qualified for this tournament here and that tournament there, et cetera, et cetera? Well, now he doesn't have to worry because he made $3.2 million to win the British Open. Now he's going to vault into the top 20. He's going to get all sorts of exemptions all over the place. He's going to be a hot name that people want in the field. But you have to wonder if maybe the fact that his family did go all in on it, and they did move to America, and they did go all in on the PGA lifestyle, if that's helped him reach a new level in his golf game. And that's the beauty of golf, too, right? You are not – it would take the rarest of rare individuals to be able to – I mean, in fact, I would just say it's impossible. To peak in a sport like basketball or football when you're 39, it's just not physically possible, really. You could have guys that are – in great shape and playing at a really high level. You could have guys that are at the peak of their powers mentally, especially at quarterback in football. But you're not going to reach the peak of your powers in almost any of the major pro sports when you're in your late 30s or early 40s, except maybe golf. And that's what makes this story so cool. Fox, by the way, won the Myrtle Beach Classic and the RBC Canadian Open earlier this year. So he does have 2 wins. He won them both in a playoff. You could tell on Sunday he did not want to go to a playoff. He rolled that putt in like nobody's business, and it was very, very impressive to watch. So that was a fun viewing experience. Last little tidbit I got for you is that's the 13th straight individual to win the British Open, for 13th straight different individual to win the British Open. So we have had no back-to-back champions, 13 different winners in the British Open. And it's just pretty cool that we keep on adding names to the list of guys that do have the ability to actually compete on Sundays in major championships, and Ryan Fox is certainly one of them. Nuanez Now 102.9 ESPN Radio. If you have not checked out Last Best Golf Company, they are located right on the corner of 4th Street and Orange. It's 517 Orange Street to be specific, but it's right there on the corner. And Last Best Golf Co., here's what they do. They bring you in. They have a simulator in the store, and they'll have you just hit balls, and they'll analyze your swing. And then they'll tell you, okay, here is how we're going to custom build you some golf clubs that are going to specifically fit your swing, your height, your wingspan, your swing velocity, the way you swing, the shots you're trying to hit. And that's going to make your game that much better. From drivers to putters, every club that they can provide you is built to your exact specs with precision care. Stop guessing, start playing your best golf. Visit Last Best Golf Company today at 517 South Orange Street and experience the difference a proper fit can make. So then we roll into the World Cup final. Much anticipated, much hyped World Cup final. This was certainly one of the most hyped I can remember a World Cup being, just in general. And I thought yesterday's match was a slugfest. I thought, even though Spain didn't want it to be, I thought it was a mismatch, even though Argentina didn't want it to be. I thought it was, by and large, sort of ugly, which is kind of how Argentina wanted it. And I thought it was, despite a 1-0 score in extra time, an absolute beatdown. I thought Spain utterly dominated this match. The Spanish possessed the ball for 68% of the match. They did not allow a shot on goal for the first 117 minutes of playing time. That's crazy. That's like pitching a perfect game for 12 innings. Like, that's wild to be able to do that. The Spanish are the best passing team. I think they could say they're the best passing team in the world, and I think they're one of the great passing teams ever. That has been a consistent identity of their country for the last 4 World Cups. The last time the Spanish won the World Cup in 2010, they're why they consider the greatest passing team ever. I think that the difference between this Spain team and that 2010 Spain team is this Spain team did not have a true, like, elite striker like some of the other teams in the World Cup did. Like Holland for Norway is a great example of that. I mean, Messi's kind of a striker. He's kind of Messi, like, just roams around, doesn't really have a position. He does everything. That's what makes him one of the greatest of all time. And certainly it was a heartbreaking end for the superstar from Argentina. Like that 2010 Spain team, for example, they had passing like this, but then they also had David Villa, who was one of the great strikers ever. If you add Villa to this Spain team, I think they're very similar in makeup to the very first Spain team to ever win a World Cup. I thought, though, the fact was that Spain looked fresher, younger, more talented, and just played way better than Argentina. Argentina did not play well. And soccer is one of those sports where if you get a stalemate sometimes when both teams play well, but then you also get a stalemate sometimes when one team's way better than another team, and the other team knows it, and they sort of have to force it to be this ugly deal. And then the other team is the team that is better is completely comfortable with just playing keep away, possessing the ball. But there's also the element of chance in soccer. I think that's the part that's hard for people that aren't all the way into it to get into. I think it's the same thing with hockey. Because of the physics of what it is and the fact that there's a goalie, sometimes shots just don't go in. They can be perfect, and they might just not go in. Or sometimes, like, a goalie just gets completely lucky with which way he dives or which way he sprawls. Or sometimes that guy just makes an elite play. But there's so many elements of chance in soccer and hockey, and I think it drives people crazy because the scoring is so much more precise and also, like, guaranteed in especially basketball, but also in in football. So I think sometimes that's hard for people to wrap their mind around, right? Spain won this match 1-0 in extra time. If you were to just see that Spain won the match 1-0, or they won it in extra time 1-0, you'd say, wow, that was an all-time great World Cup match. What a matchup. 2 evenly matched teams. That's not it at all. Spain destroyed Argentina. They completely and utterly dominated the match from start to finish. Argentina looked like they had no chance. If you didn't know beforehand that this was the second and third best teams in the world rankings going up against each other, you would have thought it was one of the 2 best teams in the world going up against a team that's not even in the top 20. So sometimes the final score is deceiving. I mean, Spain had like 25 shots on goal before Argentina even got the ball into the box. Like, that's how dominant Spain was. Again, 117 minutes without even a shot on goal, let alone a goal or any sort of chance to score. Argentina then got completely desperate for the last 10 minutes of extra time, and they scrambled and they got a couple chances. They had one legitimate chance that could have been really sweet, but it was all for naught, and Spain rides off into the sunset in one of the most highly viewed and highly hyped and very enjoyable World Cups as the champions. I was thinking about NBA parallels to this, and I would liken the Spanish to the Golden State Warriors of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green because of the passing. But you just sort of take away the offensive firepower from that analogy. But I thought the way they played the beautiful game was beautiful. Yeah, I thought Argentina was very much like the Oklahoma City Thunder, except that they weren't the favorites. They were the ones that were, backs against the wall. But you know how Oklahoma City, during the NBA season, they were grabbing and stepping on feet and tripping and doing all these things, this sort of borderline going over the line or even blatantly going over the line? Well, that's sort of what Argentina had to resort to, especially the last quarter of the game, the last quarter of regulation and all the way through extra time. And I think that, again, if you watch just this match, maybe you wouldn't have been that high on this year's World Cup. But I thought so many of the matches that I watched leading up to this final were epic. I thought this was dominant, but not that appealing visually. I thought it was probably actually the worst and most boring match that I watched. But that's sort of the way Spain did it throughout the tournament. I mean, they only gave up 1 goal in 8 matches this World Cup, and that will go down as one of the great performances defensively in the history of the event. So it was cool following along. I've never been into soccer this much in my life. You have to think part of that's just because this was in America, so it was sort of front and center. And I loved it. I'm sad it's over. I had a really fun time watching a lot of these matches. I actually had the least fun watching yesterday's match out of any of the matches, but it was still great to have a world championship type of sporting event on a Sunday on July 19th. So certainly, hopefully you'd enjoyed it as well. Nuanez Now, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Appreciate you for hanging with us here on this Monday. One last note here. This is from this week in history, sports history and otherwise, right? Today, July 20th, is the anniversary of when man landed on the moon. Apollo 11 reached the moon 1969, and Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. And so this is always going to be a date that will be remembered in history for sure. That was 1969. Then 1976, Hank Aaron hit his 755th home run, which was the Major League record since 1976 until it was broken just a few years ago. And certainly the people that surpassed Hank Aaron have asterisks by their names. So that certainly was an iconic one. When Hank Aaron, hit number 715 to pass Babe Ruth, that was a moment that I think a lot of people in baseball history did not think would happen. And then Aaron went on to add 40 more home runs to that total. So this was the day that he set the all-time record, and that record stood for quite some time. There was a fun event in Billings on Friday. It's actually a fun event going on for the next week in Billings. But the opening ceremonies for the Big Sky State Games played out on Friday night, and a couple cool performances in the Montana Mile and the Montana 100 highlighted the evening. We'll talk about that next. Don't change that down. Keep it right here. 102.9 ESPN Radio.
Around here, we see a lot of people head out. No matter where they're going, we just make sure they're ready. Before you hit the road, get a pre-trip safety check at Les Schwab Tires. It's free. Plus, this May, save up to $200 on select sets of 4 tires.
If we can't guarantee it, we won't sell it.
At Shields, we're anglers, endlessly seeking and refining techniques. We're hunters and storytellers, because we've been out there. We're experts that put products and gear to the test, so we can share that knowledge with you. At Shields, we understand your outdoor journey and the path you're on, because we walk it too, every step of the way. Shields, right there with you.
Mountain Town Vacation Rental Management, your local partner for vacation rental success. We provide a fully customized hosting experience tailored to your needs and goals. Your home is listed on every major site, helping you maximize visibility and bookings. And our local team is available 24/7 to handle guest needs and booking inquiries. Let us take the stress out of managing your vacation home. Contact us today at mountaintownvrm.com or give us a call at 406-369-3080.
The rare moments in life, they're not just few and far between. They're meant to be treasured.
Bring the whole family to the Stone of Accord for a wonderful brunch. From traditional comfort food to eclectic specials, there's something for everyone to enjoy. And it wouldn't be a proper Missoula brunch without an Irish coffee and a mimosa. The Stone of Accord, Irish fare with Montana flair. Restaurant, liquor store, and casino. At the Stone of Accord, we use the freshest ingredients to create our homemade traditional Irish classics, fresh salads, and creative specials. Come enjoy our warm, family-friendly atmosphere. The Stone of Accord, Irish fare with Montana flair. Restaurant, liquor store, and casino.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
The 41st annual Big Sky State Games kicked off in Billings Friday night with another memorable edition of the Montana Mile and Montana 100, highlighted by stand-up performances from both established stars and rising young talent. Hello, I am Hayden Smith. Despite challenging weather, Addison Kegel provided the highlight of the night in the women's Montana Mile. The sophomore to be at Billings Central broke the long-standing event record with a dominant victory. Kegel, fresh off a sensational freshman high school season that saw her sweep Montana Gatorade Runner of the Year in cross country and track and field, broke the Montana Mile record held by Lois Riccardi Keller since 2011 by running 4 minutes 51.35 seconds. The men's Montana Mile belonged to Ace Ackerman of Glendive, who finally claimed the championship after finishing runner-up multiple times. Ackerman broke through in his 7th appearance, running 4 minutes 11.51 seconds to claim the victory. The Montana 100 featured plenty of speed as 8th grader Iris Hancock of Bozeman stunned a field loaded with high school seniors and collegiate sprinters, winning the women's race in 12.45 seconds. On the men's side, Jackson Allery of Montana Tech exploded out of the blocks and cruised to a victory in his state games debut. In the second ever running the Montana 100, Allery, a Missoula Sentinel graduate, lowered the top men's time to 10.74 seconds. Columbus junior to be Garrett Prather placed second in 11.06 seconds, and Malta graduate Dawson Hammond, a future Montana Grizz, was third in 11.19 seconds.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is presented by Canyon River Golf Club. It's Nuanez Now on 102.9 ESPN Missoula. Watch the show statewide on SWX Montana Television.
Do we have a few prodigies in the state of Montana? Perhaps. Welcome back. Nuanez Now, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television, and the ESPN MT app. Colter Nuanez coming to you through the Grizzly Disposal studio here at the Missoula Broadcasting Company. Grizzly Disposal is locally owned, veteran-owned, and the only Bears that should be in your garbage. The Big Sky State Games opened on Friday in Billings and Lockwood. Lockwood's right outside of Billings. And the opening ceremonies, they always feature, now 2 really cool events. One is the Montana Mile. That's been going on since 1991 on the men's side, and since 1999 on the women's side. It's an invitational race. That's a collection of the best runners, some of the best runners in Montana. And not always do all of them show up, but it's cool because sometimes you get some athletes that are just in the midst of, or just on the rise in their high school careers. Some of them are in college. Some of them are post-collegiate runners that are still doing it either as a weekend warrior or semi-professionally or even professionally. So you get the sort of the smattering of people that are of a variety of different age groups. And that's definitely been true in both the men's and women's Montana miles. And then last year they added the Montana men's and women's 100 meters. So that's kind of cool as well. And you can it's not nearly you can't sprint the 100 meters. I mean, you can, but not at a super competitive level as long as you can distance run into a competitive level. So it's not quite the variance, but you still have high school and college kids running against each other in the Montana 100 meters. Well, that's where we lead, though, because last year it was mostly just the high school standouts that were leading the way in the Montana 100 meters. Well, on Friday, Iris Hancock was one of the athletes that stole the show. She is going to be freshman at Bozeman High School. That's right. She's just graduated 8th grade. It's her first ever appearance in the Montana 100. I don't know how young you can be, but I guarantee you she's the youngest one to do this so far. And she ran in a heat that had high school seniors, college athletes, and there was a couple Division II caliber runners. I mean, to put this in perspective, Emery Peel, who set the all-class state record at Billings Senior this last year, was in this field. And Iris Hancock won it as an 8th grader, 12.45 seconds. That's pretty cool. Like, imagine being 14 years old and lining up against college athletes and leaving with a gold medal. Just to be in the race is pretty cool. It's a pretty special way to introduce yourself to Montana track fans. So great job by Iris Hancock. I said as their prodigies, as in multiple. I think it's pretty well established that Addison Kegel is the next prodigy in Montana in distance running. And I've said this for years. One of our great exports among athletes, among sports, period, in the state of Montana is distance running. There's great running culture in a variety of different towns, but particularly Bozeman, Missoula, Helena, and Kalispell all have great running culture. Like, there's running clubs. There's all sorts of races. I mean, if you've been around Missoula, man, there's everything from the Riverbank Run to the Missoula Marathon, and you fill in, the 5Ks and 10Ks here and there all over the place. Same thing with Helena and Bozeman, though, too. Flathead has some, too. So there's great running culture. We also live at elevation, which helps with the training. There's tradition of great athletes, both male and female. But Addison Kegel is that next one. She was the Montana Gatorade Cross Country Runner of the Year as a freshman at Billings Central High School. Then this last spring, she was the Montana Gatorade Runner of the Year in track and field. Her freshman year included a state track championships in the 800, 1600, and 3200 meters in her first track and field championship. She also won the Nike Cross Northwest Regional, which makes her one of the most established runners in the entire Northwest United States. And then on Friday night, she broke the Montana mile record, and she actually smashed it. She ran 4 minutes, 51.35 seconds. That breaks a record that stood since 2011. And if you watched her against the rest of the field, she won the race by 24 seconds. So it wasn't even close. So Addison Kegel is a very impressive one. I've never had this scenario in my career where we've had two young ladies that are so good, so young. And so I'm trying to figure out how to get a hold of these gals. But I'm not, usually I contact the athletes either via their coaches or on social media. We'll just send them an Instagram message via our ESPN account. But to my knowledge, neither of these young ladies have social media yet because they're so young. But that's just incredible. You have the champion of the 100 meters on the girls' side is an 8th grader about to be a freshman, and the record-setting champion in the Montana mile on the girls' side, on the women's side, I should say, is a gal who's about to be a sophomore in high school. I'm just blown away. We're going to be watching Addison Kegel for a long time. If you're this good this early, sky's the limit for you. I think that there's national level marks in her future if she can continue on the trajectory she's got. Nuanez Now 129 ESPN Radio. The Montana Mile on the men's side, Ace Ackerman from Glendive. This is a pretty cool story. He was a good runner in high school. He was a good runner at Montana State Billings, but he's kept training as he's pursued medical school. He's in medical school at the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks. And he's come back to Montana to run the Montana Mile for 7 years now. Well, he was the runner-up in 23. He was the runner-up last year, but he hasn't been able to break through. Well, on Friday, he did. He broke through, and he won the men's Montana Mile in 4 minutes, 11.51 seconds. He was not winning until about the last 150 meters of the race. Then he finished it off strong, and he wins going away. And that's pretty cool. 7 tries to get there, and finally got a Montana Mile champion. So Ace Ackerman of Glendive takes some hardware as well. And then on the boys' side, I was interested to see I should say men's, because there's a lot of adults that are running in these things too. But the men's 100 meters, I was very interested to see sort of the duel between Braden Zickman from Manhattan High School, who's a future Grizz, and Dawson Hammond of Malta High School, who's a graduate of Malta and now is an incoming Grizz. Probably will report to Montana here next week as the Grizz start fall camp here in just 2 weeks. I want to see those two guys. I also want to see Buck Prather, who's the phenom sophomore from Columbus High School, who shattered the Class B state records in the 100 and the 200 meters and almost broke the state record, the all-class state record in the 200. He was in the heat as well. But a former Montana 100-meter champion who also is a name familiar in Missoula as we sit, ended up taking home the 100 meters on the Montana Mile, or excuse me, the Montana 100. He's a former Sentinel graduate, Jackson Allery, currently at Montana Tech. He was a state champion in the 100-meter dash at the AA meet a couple years back. He's been great at Montana Tech, and he was excellent in this final. He ran 10.74 seconds, blew everybody else out of the water. Nobody else broke 11 seconds. And I'm just interested to see, like we talk all the time about guys that are climbing the ladder in Division I sports, and there's been this burgeoning trend of athletes that are going to Frontier Conference schools, specifically Carroll College, and then transferring up to Division I, specifically to the Grizz. The Grizz have had 3 guys transfer from Carroll to Montana. You wonder if that burgeoning trend is more than just football. Could we see some of the best Frontier Conference basketball players go from an NAIA to a D1? Can you imagine these track guys? Like, your time is your time is your time, right? 10.74 is not good enough to be a Division I sprinter in Montana quite yet. To put that in perspective, guys like Carson Bites from the Grizz was running between 10.1 and 10.4. So Allery's a little ways off of that. But he's also young. So maybe if he can shave a couple tenths of a second off, maybe he can. Or maybe you make the move and you jump to D1 because you get better training, and then all of a sudden you can shave those seconds off. I don't know. I just wonder if that's a path that's similar for non-football athletes, as we've seen sort of have to be a beginning trend in football so far. So as now 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television, and the ESPN MT app. Big Sky State games will play out the rest of the week, so we'll have any storylines that pop up, we'll get them to you. Speaking of running, though, one of the most iconic and at least thought to be unbreakable records in all of track and field was the men's mile time run by Hisham El Guerrero of Morocco. He ran at altitude a 3-minute, 43.13 second mile back in 1999. So many people thought that would never, ever, ever be matched. Well, thanks to Project 222, and a pretty crazy training regimen and a whole lot of guts, Josh Kerr broke the record on Saturday. We'll get into a record I thought would maybe never fall, but it actually did. Right after this. Don't change that document right here. It's Nuanez Now, 102.9 ESPN Radio.
Life can change in an instant. If you've been hurt in an accident, suffered from medical negligence, or facing criminal charges, you don't have to face it alone. At Ryan Miller & Coburn, we're here to listen and fight for you. We're your neighbors, traveling across Montana to stand by your side is your link to justice. Real people, real help, right here in Montana. Ryan Miller and Coburn, your Montana attorneys.
Around here, we see a lot of people head out. No matter where they're going, we just make sure they're ready. Before you hit the road, get a pre-trip safety check at Les Schwab Tires. It's free. Plus, this May, save up to $200 on select sets of 4 tires.
If we can't guarantee it, we won't sell it.
Life's about the journey, not the destination, right? Why can't it be about both?
Jewelry Design Center. We want to be your jeweler for life.
Now on 102.9 ESPN Radio Missoula.
This year, but
Welcome back. 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television, and the ESPN MT app. Colter Nuanez coming to you through the Grizzly Disposal studio here at the Missoula Broadcasting Company. Grizzly Disposal, locally owned, veteran-owned, the only Bears that should be in your garbage. I thought that probably the most mind-blowing thing that happened this weekend, outside of Ryan Fox having literally no nerves as he drilled a walk-off, 12 to 15-foot putt for birdie on the 72nd hole of the British Open to win his first career major as a 39-year-old. That in itself was pretty stunning. But I don't know if you'll see anything in the athletic world that's as comparable to Josh Kerr of Great Britain doing what he did on Saturday night at the London Diamond League Track and Field Championships. This was basically on his home track. He trains and he's from Great Britain, trains there. The Diamond League travels all around Europe and even some of Western Asia with events. But the men's mile record has stood since 1927 when Morocco great Hisham El Guerrero ran 3 minutes 43.13 seconds. That was back on July 7th, 1999. Well, Josh Kerr went out and ran 3 minutes 42.66 seconds. So he broke the all-time record by more than half a second. That in itself is unbelievable. But perhaps the coolest part of this story is Kerr publicly announced, I guess it would have been late last year, that he was embarking on this odyssey that he called Project 222. Project 222 is he and his trainer's strategic plan to get him to run 222 seconds for a mile. That equates to 3 minutes and 42 seconds, which he ran 3 minutes 42.13 .66 seconds. So he got there. He literally named the effort Project 222 and built his entire season around chasing the record, and then he actually went out and did it. That's pretty crazy to call your shot. If you're wondering how fast this is, first of all, go watch the video. But second of all, let's put this in perspective if you are a track nerd that understands track times. Then I'll put it in perspective if you're just a layman person that knows next to nothing about running. From a track perspective, his first split, 54.75 seconds. His first 800 meters, 1 minute and 50 seconds. By the way, I mean, that would be like a collegiate national championship time. And he still got 2 more laps after that. He was through 1,200 meters at 2 minutes and 46 seconds. And then came in at 3:42.66. His average split, 55.7 seconds, which is crazy. And Itapo Del Guerrero is one of the top distance runners in the history of track and field. That record came in 1999, and there's been 4 Olympics and endless world championships since then. There's been the implementation of Mondo track surface, which is one of the most premier track surfaces for fast times. That is the gold standard. That's happened since 1999. Carbon-plated shoes have happened in track and field, and that's totally revolutionized distance running. Still, this record stood, despite the tracks, despite the training, despite ChatGPT and all the different tips you can get on honing in your fitness. Most of the world records from around track and field have fallen recently, but this was one that stood until Kerr went out and absolutely assaulted it. To put this in perspective from a layman, this is actually my brother just texted me this, and then I confirmed through some additional research. A standard factory treadmill that you just run on at the gym or whatever, if you crank it all the way, like you go to 10 out of 10 on there, and the belt's going as fast as it can go, you can run between 13.8 and 14.5 miles per hour. So that means if you crank it to the max, think about how fast that treadmill can go. If you crank it to the max at 14 point something miles per hour, you are only quote unquote gonna run a mile that's in the high 350s or low 4-minute range. You literally can't turn the treadmill up high enough to be able to run as fast as Josh Kerr did. Like if you were you could just put the machine on and not even have anybody running on it, and it would not cover a mile as fast as Josh Kerr did, even if you cranked it all the way to the max. That's how fast this guy is running in this. Totally insane. Couldn't believe it. The video is absolutely worth watching. It's on all the various social medias. Again, it won't take any of your time. It takes 3 minutes and 43 seconds to watch this thing, and the guy is an absolute machine in doing it. But last couple fun tidbits. There has, the 4-minute mile was like this iconic mark a little bit less than a century ago, and Roger Bannister was the first person to ever run under 4 minutes in the mile. He was from Great Britain, and since then, there's been 7 men that have held the mile world record, including now Kerr. So when you talk about all the great athletes and all the great performances that have come out of Great Britain, certainly men's mile runners have been perhaps their greatest runners. And there's been 7 different Brits that have held the men's mile world record. But Kerr is the first British runner since Steve Cram in 1985 to own the outdoor mile world record outright. Again, though, Haisham Guerrero had this thing for 27 years, so no Brit or anybody else, just the Moroccan had the world record for, almost my entire life. Most of my adult life, certainly. All of my adult life, most of my life. So it certainly has been a pretty long-standing and in that conversation as maybe one of the most unbreakable records in track and field, and then all of a sudden it goes down, and it's because of the determination and the vision to execute Project 222. So if you haven't watched the video, you want something fun to watch while you're scrolling later on, go check out Josh Kerr's world record mile time. Nuanez Now tonight, ESPN Radio. On the other side, we will talk a bunch of football. There are a variety of athletes from the state of Montana that are up for at least in the conversation for national awards. There's also plenty of All-Americans, and there's plenty of football storylines to talk about, including the preseason Big Sky Conference polls. How do we vote? How did the league vote? Who are the outright favorites in the Big Sky Conference in football this upcoming fall? We'll talk about all that next. Hour 1 in the books. Hour 2 coming your way. Don't change that dial. Keep it right here. It's 129 ESPN Radio.
Jewelry Design Center. We want to be your jeweler for life.
Bring the whole family to the Stone of Accord for a wonderful brunch. From traditional comfort food to eclectic specials, there's something for everyone to enjoy. And it wouldn't be a proper Missoula brunch without an Irish coffee and a mimosa. The Stone of Accord, Irish fare with Montana flair. Restaurant, liquor store, and casino. At the Stone of Accord, we use the freshest ingredients to create our homemade traditional Irish classics, fresh salads, and creative specials. Come enjoy our warm, family-friendly atmosphere. The Stone of Accord, Irish fare with Montana flair. Restaurant, liquor store, and casino.
In honor of our Green Nation's 250th anniversary, Mattress Firm is having its biggest 4th of July sale ever. The entire lineup of top-rated mattress brands are on sale with prices starting at $149 up to top-of-the-line mattresses with lifetime warranties. Get the sleep you deserve with payments starting at $39 a month. Mattress Firm has pillows, sheets, adjustable bases, all on sale too during their biggest 4th of July sale ever. Locally owned and nationally known Mattress Firm.
Mattress Firm, where it's easy to get a great night's sleep.
Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
The 41st annual Big Sky State Games kicked off in Billings Friday night with another memorable edition of the Montana Mile and Montana 100, highlighted by stand-up performances from both established stars and rising young talent. Hello, I am Hayden Smith. Despite challenging weather, Addison Kegel provided the highlight of the night in the women's Montana Mile. The sophomore to be at Billings Central broke the long-standing event record with a dominant victory. Kegel, fresh off a sensational freshman high school season that saw her sweep Montana Gatorade Runner of the Year in cross country and track and field, broke the Montana Mile record held by Lois Riccardi Keller since 2011 by running 4 minutes 51.35 seconds. The men's Montana Mile belonged to Ace Ackerman of Glendive, who finally claimed the championship after finishing runner-up multiple times. Ackerman broke through in his 7th appearance, running 4 minutes 11.51 seconds to claim the victory. The Montana 100 featured plenty of speed as 8th grader Iris Hancock of Bozeman stunned a field loaded with high school seniors and collegiate sprinters, winning the women's race in 12.45 seconds. On the men's side, Jackson Allery of Montana Tech exploded out of the blocks and cruised to a victory in his state games debut. In the second ever running the Montana 100, Allery, a Missoula Sentinel graduate, lowered the top men's time to 10.74 seconds. Columbus junior to be Garrett Prather placed second in 11.06 seconds, and Malta graduate Dawson Hammond, a future Montana Grizz, was third in 11.19 seconds.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is presented by Canyon River Golf Club. Nuanez Now on ESPN Radio.
Welcome back. Nuanez Now. 1029 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television, and the ESPN MT app. I'm Colter Nuanez. We are coming to you through the Grizzly Disposal studio here at the Missoula Broadcasting Company. Grizzly Disposal has one bin recycling for your house, so they can pick it up for you anytime, twice a month. All your cans, all your plastics, et cetera, et cetera. Don't waste that time and the effort hauling all over town. Let Grizzly Disposal pick it up for you. You want to add the service or make the switch or both? Call 406-541-7171 or visit grizzlydisposal.com. Grizzly Disposal. Locally owned, veteran owned, and the only bears that should be in your garbage. I didn't have enough time to read about this today. I was trying to get all of our Big Sky kickoff stuff scheduled today, as well as get the show all in order and be, kind of get caught up from the taking a couple days off last week too. So go through some emails, et cetera, et cetera. I just didn't have enough time or bandwidth to read the full sort of dissertation about the situation at Michigan. Not trying to ignore it. I think we'll talk about this probably later on this week. Both Ryan Tutel, Brooks Nuanez are going to swing by later on this week, so that seems like a good subject matter to touch on with them. But Michigan's AD is stepping down, and this comes after an internal investigation and an internal audit. And basically the president of the university is like, stuff's not good, right? The school released a summary of an independent investigation into the culture of the scandal-plagued athletic department, which concluded that issues were not widespread, but that Manuel, Ward Manuel, the athletic director, is going to have to step away at the end of the year. So not ignoring this, just don't know that much about it. Obviously, there was the huge scandal with Sharon Moore that resulted in his firing. Michigan just sort of seems like they've just been living in the more money, more problems world for since the Fab Four. I mean, even since they won the national championship in basketball way back in 1989. It's basically been my lifetime that Michigan has just been, not necessarily enraptured in scandal, but has looked like it's been more money, more problems. So not ignoring that, but did want to acknowledge, I know that happened, and that's a big news brief today. We'll talk about that probably a little bit later on this week as well. I don't know why this is, but there's a lot of Michigan fans around here. I know, like our good friends down at the Mo Club, owner-operators down there, they love Michigan. A couple of our good buddies at Stockman Bank love Michigan. So there's a lot of Michigan people around here. So obviously they probably don't want us to analyze this and hash it out, but it's huge news in the sports world. So we'll certainly talk about it a little bit later on here this week. There's also discussion on the message boards over the weekend, which, take them for what they're worth. But one inquiry was asking why, or sort of the timeline behind our recruiting coverage here at Nuanez Now. By the way, if you're missing the first hour of the show, you can always find it on the Nuanez Now podcast, which is available on all your various podcast hosting platforms. And if you'd like to be a part of the show, please let us know your thoughts on any of it. Michigan situation, the Big Sky Conference preseason polls, which we're about to talk about here, what you think about distance running on the world stage or in Montana, what you thought about the World Cup, the British Open, any of that stuff, let us know. 406-888-1029. Shoot us a text, and Hayden can forward them right along to me, and we'll get into any and everything that you might have to ask. But somebody was asking just sort of about our procedure. So we have had, right now, for football, we're talking, the Grizz have, I think, 20 or 21 verbal commitments from high school prospects. 9 of those young men are in-state kids, and we have done interviews with, I believe, 6 of them. One of them, Walker Olson, is newish, and so I have a message into him that I haven't heard back from yet. 2 more, Drew Almquist and Cooper Pelk, declined our interview requests until maybe later on in their senior years. So I appreciate them for just letting me know that. I can't imply any of the reason why, but we'll just leave it at that. And then Montana State, I think they have 20 or 21 verbal commits as well, including 7 kids from in-state. And I think we've had 4 of those guys on the show, and 3 of them are within the last couple of weeks, so we're catching up on those as well. Cannon Richmond from Three Forks, one of those young men, Logan Streckler of Billings Central, who's the most recent Bobcat commit from Billings Central. We have a message into him. And then Lane Humphrey from Billings West, who's a great player, linebacker. He was our vertical raised Class AA Defensive Player of the Year this last year. And one of several Division I guys there for the Golden Bears. So we have requests into all the guys that we haven't added onto the show, basically, that are in-state guys. The question on the message board, actually the criticism on the message board, is why haven't we done interviews or analysis of the verbal commitments to the Grizz or the Cats that are from out of state? So my answer to that, it's a valid question, certainly. My answer to that is twofold. One, we always concentrate on the in-state kids because I think that's the storylines I think Montanans most want to hear. It's also much easier for me to give you a very accurate analysis of kids that play high school football in the state of Montana and how they translate to the Grizz than it is for me to give you an analysis of a kid from Dallas or Seattle or something. Like, you can tell this kid's a good football player by watching his film, but do you know how good it is, the team he's playing against? I don't know, like, if a kid's from Puyallup or Renton or he plays in the King County League in Seattle. Like, I have a pretty broad sense of the quality of the competition that young man's playing against, but I don't know, like, the back of my hand. Whereas when I'm watching Billings West film and they're going against Kalispell Glacier, I know, okay, that quarterback, Jackson Presley's a D1 guy. That receiver, whether it's Bridger Smith, who plays for the Grizz currently, or Cooper Pelk, who's going to play for the Grizz. Like, I know those guys are college guys. Okay, so let's watch Walker Olson's film. Here he is. He's playing safety for West, state championship, Glacier versus West. I know exactly the quality of play. I can give you an accurate analysis of that film. And I also have sources that can tell me, okay, this kid's really good at this, or this kid might have a hard time transitioning at this level of D1 football. So that's one of the reasons we prioritize it. First of all, I think you guys want the in-state guys the most. If you're doing a hierarchy. Second, it's easiest for me to analyze and give you an accurate take on it. And then third, we oftentimes save the out-of-state guys to do in the season, right? We sort of fill up a lot of our summertime with the in-state guys. And a lot of times the in-state guys are the ones that are the earliest to commit to because they're going to be the ones that are the earliest signees. But then you look at some of these kids that are committed, like to the Grizz, for example. They got this sweet little dual-threat athlete type of kid, Rye Roberts out of New Braunfels, Texas, which is right outside San Antonio. I'm interested in learning more about that kid's story. So we'll figure out a way to catch up with him here in the next couple of weeks or months, right? I'm not going to go through the list of all these 21 guys for the Grizz or for the Cats, but there's a question of why we haven't talked much about them. I'll break down those lists as much as I can here in the next 5 or 6 weeks. We'll round up some of those guys, but that's just sort of the procedure here. We do the in-state kids during like May, June, and July, and then we start diving into the recruiting class and getting the out-of-state kids like August through football season. So it just keeps the content and the recruiting coverage going. So there's the answer to your question. If you were the person that asked that on Bobcat Nation, the message board, there's your answer. I'll post the link to the podcast here, so you can get your answer. But have no fear, we will have as many of the interviews of the recruits, whether they're from Montana or Texas or anywhere else, here on the show. Now that football's here. I mean, it's crazy how long football lasts now, right? Big Sky Media Days is this weekend, so we're getting going in July. Camp opens on August 3rd, and then the national championship game for FCS is not until January 11th. That's crazy. That's 6 months right there. And then you roll over into the NFL season, and then it goes to mid-February. Then you got the reactions coming out of that. It used to be we would cover football for like mid-August when fall camp used to have double days, and it was a lot more condensed. And then you'd cover it through December because the national championship game used to be before Christmas. Well, now there is no more doubles, so camp starts 2 to 3 weeks earlier. It seems like it's an equal chance that the Montana schools have a week 0 game because the FCS likes to showcase itself during that week before everybody else opens up. So if you get a chance to be one of 5 or 6 college football games in the entire country, that's great exposure for your university. It's also just an earlier week you have to start, right? Like Montana State played week 0 2 years ago. Idaho State played week 0 last year. So again, it's football earlier, which is fun to watch, and it gives you a chance to have a watch party and hang out with your buddies and get sort of back into football mode. But it just makes the season so long. So that's been it's been not a challenge, but it's been something I've had to be conscious of. Is how do you spread out all this content when you actually? I mean, we have probably on the front end, you probably have, I'd say, 5 extra weeks now of stuff to cover and things to talk about. But also airtime to fill. And then on the back end, you also got an extra 3 weeks. So you're talking about 8 to 10 weeks of more time that you got to have content to come up with. Of course, that's what makes football and sports great. It's the gift that never stops giving. There's always content to be had. There's always stuff to talk about. It's just, there's just a lot more where football is the primary focus on the calendar. So on that note, let's keep on talking football. This conversation probably presented in part by Cash One Pawn. Cash One Pawn is the premier pawn shop in western Montana. You need quick cash? Cash One Pawn's got you covered. Just head out to their showroom on Roller Coaster Road, right past the Missoula Airport, right short of the Y. They can get you cash in hand in efficient fashion. You can also always shop online. They have an extensive inventory of everything from firearms to jewelry to power tools to speaker equipment. Shop online at Cash One Pawn. That's cash, the number 1, pawn.com. I actually had the show done earlier today because I had a couple of appointments this afternoon, a couple sales things to do. So I actually didn't have the preseason Big Sky Conference polls in. Traditionally, the polls have come out during the media day, which is fine, but it also makes it like this crazy news dump because we have all these interviews going on, and you're sitting there grinding away, so it's really hard to just go bang out a little story about this and get it out to the world. Certainly it circulates around social media and stuff like that. I just always thought it was weird to have a news dump on a day where there's already going to be so much news, right? Like when the media days are happening, especially on Monday of media days, I mean, they have like a 4-hour TV show. They stream interviews with every head coach in the conference, multiple players from around the league. Then you factor in all the media outlets from Montana and around the conference that are putting out stories that day with all these interviews and all these different things. To also jam in the polls and the preseason all-conference teams, it just seemed sort of weird. Well, now they're releasing them earlier, which is great because guess what? Now we can actually have a week to think about this, talk about it, whatever, and we can go to the kickoff now this upcoming weekend and ask the various subjects about this. So I think that's great. Good job by the Big Sky for doing that. But I guess that's all to say. I was not expecting the Big Sky Conference to release its preseason coaches and media poll today, but they did. Not that who tops the poll, not just first, but I think first through fifth is any surprise. Montana State, the defending national champions, the defending Big Sky Conference champions, they're the league favorites in both the polls. The Bobcats received 35 first-place votes from the media and 11 of the 13 first-place votes in the coaches poll. For those keeping track, the media poll had 38 total voters, so Montana State gets 35 out of 38. Montana gets 1 first-place vote from the media, and UC Davis gets 2 first-place votes from the media. In the coaches poll, Cats got all 11 first-place votes. Montana got none, interestingly enough, and UC Davis got 2. But it's chalk for the first 3 teams in the conference. Montana State consensus to repeat. Montana, number 2, right behind the Cats, and then UC Davis, number 3 in each of the respective polls. Polls get different, though, when you get to number 4. The media is drinking the Idaho State Kool-Aid. I'm not saying it's Kool-Aid like it's fake. I think Idaho State has a chance to be good this year, too. But the media picked Idaho State 4th and Northern Arizona 5th. The Big Sky coaches picked NAU 4th and Idaho State 5th. But still the same top 5 teams. And that's exactly where I think that there are 7 teams in the Big Sky that if things went their way and maybe things go not the way of a couple of the other squads, could be playoff teams. I'm not saying the Big Sky is getting 7 playoff teams in. That's not happening. There's never going to be more than 5. And in most years, it's going to be 3 or 4. But I think the 7 teams that are real contenders for the 5 spots included those 5 we just named: Montana State, Montana, UC Davis. I think absolutely it'd have to be disasters for those teams to not make the playoffs. Then I think Idaho State, Northern Arizona will be fighting for that 4th spot. I think Idaho is right there as well. And how does Idaho fare against those 2 teams that I think are right ahead of them, NAU and Idaho State? That season finale between Idaho and Idaho State in Moscow is going to be fascinating. And I think Southern Utah should probably be, I think they'll be right there. And then that's, the coaches had Southern Utah 6th in the poll and Idaho 7th, and the media had Idaho 6th in the poll and Southern Utah 7th. So I think those are the 7 teams that that have a realistic chance of perhaps pursuing a playoff berth. Rest of the league, it's just hard to delineate. Like, Weber State is the one where I'm like, okay, can Eric Carr, the new head coach, get some jolt of life back into him? They made the playoffs 5 times under Jay Hill. How do they get back to that spot? The rest of it, I just have no faith. Like, to me, there is no scenario in which, to me, there's one scenario in which Eastern Washington returns to being playoff caliber. And that's if their young quarterback, who came into Washington Grizzly Stadium and threw for 1 million yards, and the defense continues to get better. Jake Shackle is his name. He basically got thrust in the starting lineup a week before Eastern came to Missoula last year, and then he threw for 464 yards against the Grizz, and Eastern took Montana down to the wire at Washington Grizz. And the defense was pretty improved. I know people want to point towards like the season, the Big Sky opener last year for Eastern Washington, when they just took one on the chin and got absolutely run roughshod by Montana State in Bozeman. I know a lot of Grizz fans were concerned about that performance when the Grizz hired Eric Sanders as their defensive coordinator. Sanders has been the defensive coordinator at Eastern the last 2 years. But Eastern's defense objectively did get better as the season went along. And I think that they have a couple of the best defensive players in the conference, in Isaiah Perez, who's a defensive lineman, as well as Jalen Jenkins, who's a safety and a preseason All-American. If Shackle goes bananas as Eastern's quarterback, and they get great offensive production across the board, and their offensive line returns to fine form, and the defense is at least middling to average, maybe Eastern could put it together and be a team that's a bubble playoff team. I just don't see it. I just think that they've lost their momentum as a program. They've lost their ability to be a truly like nationally prominent deal. Ever since Eric Berry walked out the door in 2021, that year Eastern was good. They won 10 games. They lost in the quarterfinals of the FCS playoffs. Excuse me, the second round of the FCS playoffs to Montana in Missoula. But then since then, 3 wins, 4 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins. So 5 wins was actually their best year in the last 4, but they haven't had a winning record since 2021. Eastern's 5 wins last year: Western Illinois, who was a total dumpster fire; Portland State, who was a total cellar dweller; Idaho, who at the time was 24th in the country, but they ended up a 4-8 squad. It was actually worse than Eastern. Weber, who was terrible, and their coach got fired. They were a 2-win team a year ago. And then Northern Colorado, who's a 2-win team as well. So you add up the win totals of those teams, and I mean, Western Illinois was a 4-win team. Portland State was a 0-win team. Idaho was a 4-win team. Weber was a 2-win team. Northern Colorado was, won 4 games but only won 2 games in conference. So you're talking about all the wins were against all the teams that aren't any good. So if it was up to me, I think it would be great for the conference if Eastern Washington and Weber State were amongst those teams that were in the top half and actually in the mix of the playoffs. But I still think they are. It's become pretty clear that Montana State sits on the throne for the Big Sky Conference, but that Montana is right there chipping away at it. UC Davis is sort of like, if Montana State's the king, then Montana's like the prince, and then UC Davis is like the king's hand. They're not quite in charge of anything yet, but they're still right there, and they're pretty solidified. Those 3 teams, I think, in the immediate future are going to be the 3 teams that are going to carry the day for the Big Sky Conference. That 4th, though, is sort of like a 5-horse race between, in no particular order, I think the teams that have the best chance to occupy it are in order: Idaho, just because of the fan base and the resources, etc. Northern Arizona, again, they got a good coach, they got a good athletic department, they have some revenue production and resources to work with, they have a good recruiting base, they have a fine venue, good internal facilities, and then I think it's probably Southern Utah and Idaho State, who both have a chance to be pretty good, but also have some big challenges to overcome from a broad perspective, from a big picture perspective. Weaknesses that you have to mitigate are more glaring at Idaho State and Southern Utah than those other 5 teams that I named. But it's become pretty clear to me that fourth spot is going to belong to Idaho, NAU, or Eastern Washington. But Eastern Washington is the one that's been on the outside looking in. And that's just because of a variety of different deals. I mean, Aaron Bess has just not been able to keep it rolling. He had the breakthrough year in his second year in 2018 when Bo Baldwin had a whole bunch of players still on the team. Then Eastern had a lull for a couple years, but then they got back at it with Barrier. Basically, if Eastern has had Eric Barrier as their quarterback and Aaron Bess as their coach, they've been good. They've been above 500 3 seasons in a row. They had a 12-win year and a 10-win year. Since Eric Barrier walked out the door and it's just Aaron Bess, Eastern has not been right there. I don't know how they're going to get back in that mix. Like, they just seem to be going in a different direction than Idaho, even though Idaho had a down year last year, or than NAU. I think that's just, they're kind of just stuck right there. And then when you look at the rest of it after Eastern Washington, again, Weber State's the one, like, can Eric Carr, the new head coach, get them back to where they were just a handful of years ago? Or are they going to just stay middling? Eastern seems like they have downward trajectory just because of the environment at the university and the lack of momentum they have as a program. And then I think Cal Poly, Northern Colorado, and Portland State are all just up a creek. I don't know how you can possibly be good at those schools. I just don't know how. Cal Poly, if they could figure out how to balance the academics and the challenging academic requirements, if they could balance that with recruiting the top football talent in their part of California, they could be good. There's been good Cal Poly teams in the past, but since they abandoned the triple option and since they abandoned having an identity as a program, they've been a mess. And they've brought in some highly regarded coaches. I mean, Bo Baldwin was one of the great coaches of Big Sky Conference history. He couldn't get anything going at Cal Poly. Paul Wolf was who laid the foundation at Eastern Washington. He couldn't get anything going at Cal Poly. So I don't know where you turn if you're Cal Poly. You got to have some semblance of continuity between the academic side and the football side. They do have the new $55 million facility that John Madden helped fund. John Madden, probably the most famous alum from Cal Poly. But for now, I think Cal Poly is enough behind and has such little momentum. I don't know where you go from there. Northern Colorado is not a Division I program. They've never funded it like a D1 program. They play at basically a D2 facility at Nottingham Field in Greeley. I don't know what would ever tell you that Northern Colorado has a chance to. I mean, unless you're a huge proponent of Ed Lamb, who's a great coach, who's been a multiple-time Big Sky Conference Coach of the Year, but that was at Southern Utah. Southern Utah's a lot easier to recruit to than Northern Colorado. Northern Colorado, until they invest like a D1, they're going to, I mean, they've never had they've had one winning season in their Division I history, and they had to play 2 D2 games to get there. So they've never had a full 6 Division I wins in a calendar year during the football season. I don't know why that would change. Like, I don't know how they're not just 11th for the rest of time. And then Portland State, as long as they're playing at Hillsborough High School, and they're not allowed to play at PGE Park downtown, and they don't fund it like a real D1, and they think a coaching change is going to make a difference, I just don't know how. Like, how do you recruit to a football team that practices downtown Portland and then has to drive 45 minutes to a high school to play their games? How is that Division I? Like, think of that reality. Portland State will play their home games in a stadium that doesn't even have bleachers on both sides of the field. And then they'll play away games in Missoula and Bozeman, where there's 25 to 30,000 people there watching. That's a crazy reality to live in if you're Portland State, but I don't know how you escape it. And then the team that was actually last in both polls is Utah Tech. I had Utah Tech, I think, at 9th or 10th, because I just think it's so hard for Northern Colorado and Portland State to not be the 2 worst teams in the league. I mean, I don't know what has changed about their program that would make you think that they're going to be anything but that. That's not to say I think Utah Tech is going to be crazy good, but I actually think Utah Tech has the chance to be good someday. Utah Tech's located in St. George, Utah, which is a cool town. They have a recruiting base. High school football in the state of Utah is great. They have momentum. They went from a junior college called Dixie State to a Division II, then to an independent Division I, then into the AAC, and now they're in the Big Sky. So they have continued to move up the ranks, which is that's not something you could say for some of those other schools we were just talking about. So I don't know if they're going to be last or ninth or whatever this year, but I do think they have a lot more future potential than anybody else I just named, save probably Cal Poly. But I think Eastern Washington's in a tough spot. I think I think Northern Colorado, Portland State are in tough spots. Maybe Cal Poly can salvage something. We'll see. I think Weber should and could be good, but I don't know if they will be good. But in terms of how I voted, I pretty much had it exactly like the Big Sky Conference coaches. I had Montana State number 1, Montana number 2, UC Davis number 3. I had Northern Arizona number 4, Idaho State number 5. I had Idaho number 6 and Southern Utah number 7. Then I had I had Weber State, Eastern Washington, Cal Poly, Utah Tech, Northern Colorado, and Portland State. That's my Big Sky preseason poll. I'll post it on our various social medias a little bit later on here this evening. Didn't get to hardly any of the national award stuff that I wanted to get to, so we'll do that on the other side. Don't change that dial. Keep it right here. More football coming your way. It's Nuanez Now, 102.9 ESPN Radio.
Is a will you marry me in your future? Or maybe you do it all over again. Hi, I'm Brian Toon with Jewelry Design Center, inviting you to come see the largest selection of Will You Marry Me in the state of Montana. The brightest diamonds of every shape and size, unique settings built to last, and skilled jewelers on site offering free sizing and maintenance for life, because that's how long we want to be your jeweler. Jewelry Design Center in Missoula, on Brooks, across from the Montana Club.
The 41st annual Big Sky State Games kicked off in Billings Friday night with another memorable edition of the Montana Mile and Montana 100, highlighted by stand-up performances from both established stars and rising young talent. Hello, I am Hayden Smith. Despite challenging weather, Addison Kegel provided the highlight of the night in the women's Montana Mile. The sophomore to be at Billings Central broke the long-standing event record with a dominant victory. Kegel, fresh off a sensational freshman high school season that saw her sweep Montana Gatorade Runner of the Year in cross country and track and field, broke the Montana Mile record held by Lois Riccardi Keller since 2011 by running 4 minutes 51.35 seconds. The men's Montana Mile belonged to Ace Ackerman of Glendive, who finally claimed the championship after finishing runner-up multiple times. Ackerman broke through in his 7th appearance, running 4 minutes 11.51 seconds to claim the victory. The Montana 100 featured plenty of speed as 8th grader Iris Hancock of Bozeman stunned a field loaded with high school seniors and collegiate sprinters, winning the women's race in 12.45 seconds. On the men's side, Jackson Allery of Montana Tech exploded out of the blocks and cruised to a victory in his state games debut. In the second ever running the Montana 100, Allery, a Missoula Sentinel graduate, lowered the top men's time to 10.74 seconds. Columbus junior to be Garrett Prather placed second in 11.06 seconds, and Malta graduate Dawson Hammond, a future Montana Grizz, was third in 11.19 seconds.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is presented by Canyon River Golf Club. It's Nuanez Now on 102.9 ESPN Missoula. Watch the show statewide on SWX Montana Television.
Welcome back. 129 ESPN Radio. It's Nuanez Now. Coming to you through the Grizzly Disposal Studio here at the Missoula Broadcast Company, Grizzly Disposal. Locally owned, veteran-owned, and the only Bears that should be in your garbage. We mentioned this in passing it on the Sports Center over the weekend, but I wanted to hash it out a little bit more. Preseason All-American list came out early last week, featuring 8 Montana State Bobcats, 3 Montana Grizzlies, and 23 players total from the Big Sky Conference. The watch list for the Walter Payton Award, which is given to the top offensive player in the FCS, and the watch list for the Buck Buchanan Award, given to the top defensive player in the FCS, also came out. And we touched on that last week, but I wanted to actually discuss it a little bit. So your Walter Payton Award finalists, or I guess they're not finalists. I always misspeak and say that. This is just the watch list. Then all of a sudden, there's an initial vote, and you get semifinalists. Then they pare it down with the final vote to have 3 or 4, depending on how many votes there are, finalists come to the national awards, and then they award the top vote getter in each of these awards the weekend of the national championship, which this year, again, will be in Nashville. So these are the guys that are on the watch list. You don't have to be on the preseason watch list to be a finalist, but certainly it helps because it means your campaign is rolling. It's kind of like the Heisman. Like if you have a Heisman campaign before any of the games are played, you have a significantly better chance of being in the mix for the Heisman. It's the same thing for the Peyton. It's the same thing for the Buck Buchanan Award. I also feel that the Montana schools, University of Montana was great on offense last year, and they put up a ton of prolific numbers. Montana State was also very good, very efficient on offense, but they spread the ball around a whole bunch as well. Because of the balanced nature of the rosters within the program, all the factors that go into building championship football teams in Montana, from the players that you can recruit to the style that you're almost required to play, and it's because of the tradition and culture that exists for both the Grizz and the Cats, it's been exceedingly hard for players from the Montana schools to win the Walter Payton Award. The Grizz have only had one Walter Payton Award winner ever. That was Dave Dickinson in 1995 when they won the national championship. The Bobcats have also only ever had one Walter Payton Award winner ever. That was Tommy Mellott in 2024. who led the Cats to the national championship game, but then they lost 35-32 to North Dakota State. A lot of times, too, they steal hype and juice about these awards from each other. So Montana State has 3 guys nominated: Justin Lamson, Taco Dowler, Adam Jones. I think all 3 of those guys are going to have really good years this fall. But if you're a voter and all 3 of them have really good years, who do you vote for? Like, who do you decide is the most important? One of them might just go all the way off, but they probably are all going to have really good, but maybe not like top of the world stats. The other thing is that the SCS, a lot of times, the guys that have some of the best offensive stats are the guys that are on not that great of teams, right? Like Bo Brumgard, who's the reigning Walter Payton Award winner, he played at Youngstown State. That was a 4-loss football team last year. They went 8-4, and then they dipped out in the first round of the playoffs when they had a huge lead and then let Yale come all the way storming back. And then Yale went on the road the following week to Bozeman and gave the Cats a good fight for bowing out. But Brumgard was the engine that made everything go. He threw for almost 4,000 yards, and he rushed for over 1,500 yards. But again, that was on a team that was all the way up and down and lost 4 times during the regular season alone. He was the guy because he had to be the guy, and he was fortunate enough to stay healthy. But we've seen this a lot, too, with quarterbacks like at Eastern Washington that have been on just sort of middling teams that are behind a lot, that throw for 1,000,000 yards. We've seen this with some of the other teams that spread it out. Sanford has run the air raid at times, so they've had some prolific passers. Stephen F. Austin has been in that mix from time to time. Sam Houston State used to run the spread option, so they'd have some guys with some huge offensive numbers, regardless of the quality of their team. Most often, the Montana schools are going to play a pretty deliberate style. Right now, the Grizz are spreading it out quite a bit because they got such a talented quarterback, such great offensive skill guys. And Kaylee Ayat is one of the other guys that's on this watch list for the Grizz. But if you look at these 5 guys from the state of Montana, Lamson, Dowler, and Jones from Montana State, Ayat and Eli Gilman from Montana, I think Gilman has the best chance of winning the Walter Payton Award, and that has nothing to do with what I think of the prospects of the season. The debate between who's better, Lamson or Ayat, and who's the best quarterback, not just in the conference but in the country, is going to be one that rages all year long. And that's going to be very fun to have each week. Whatever guy plays better, that's going to be a good barometer. But I also think that Gilman's the guy that's going to have the most eye-popping stats. If Eli Gilman stays healthy for the Grizz, which, knock on wood, we hope all these guys, Cats or Grizz, stay healthy. If he stays healthy, he is going to put up crazy numbers because that's what he's been doing for 3 years. If he takes his game up one more notch, he's going to be the front runner for the Walter Payton Award, no doubt. So if you were to handicap this, Brumgard from Youngstown State has to be the favorite. He was the Walter Payton Award winner last year, and you can't imagine they're going to do anything but just ride him and ride him some more. I mean, he was like the most high-usage point guard in all of college sports last year, and that's why he had such prolific numbers, right? He was the point guard. He was the quarterback. He was the guy. They put the ball in his hands and let him roll. He's got to be the favorite, but if you were to pick a guy out of the Montana schools, that's the front runner, I think it's Eli Gilman. But I also could see Ayat throwing for a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns. But I also think all those Montana State guys could have huge numbers and huge years as well. When it comes to Taco Dowler, they just have to get him his touches in spots because he's such a high focus for the opposing defenses. So, I mean, last year he had great numbers, but, like, is he going to be a 150-touch guy, or is he going to be a 75-touch guy? Like, I think you got to be able to, if you're going to score the amount of touchdowns and have the numbers you need to be the Walter Payton Award winner, you're going to have to touch the ball 10 to 12 times a game. That's going to be harder for a slot receiver to do than it is for Adam Jones to do. Adam Jones is going to get 12 to 15, maybe 20 carries, and he's going to catch the ball, 2 to 5, maybe 8 times in a game. Gilman, same deal. He's getting 20 carries. He's going to get 3 to 6 catches. It's a lot of touches. I mean, it might take Taco Dowler a month to get 25 touches, where Eli Gilman should probably get 25 touches every given Saturday. But then Lamson's going to touch the ball on every down, and he's one of the great dual threats in the country. Ayat, same deal. Ayat's a good runner, and they hardly ran him at all last year because they wanted to keep him healthy, which is smart. But I just think if you were to say out of those 5 guys that are on the watch list right now, who's the front runner, it's Gilman. And it's not because I think the Grizz are better than the Cats, or because I think Gilman's the best player, although I do think Gilman's the best player out of all those guys, because I think Gilman's an NFL draft pick. It's the fact that if Gilman does what he's supposed to do and stays healthy, he's just going to be, what are you setting the over-under for his rushing total at if he stays all the way healthy? He rushed for 1,650 last year. I'm putting the over-under at like 1,399. And if he stays healthy, plays all 12 games in the regular season, I'm taking the over. I think he scored 16 rushing touchdowns last year. I'm putting the over-under for rushing touchdowns at 14.5. I'm taking the over if he plays all the games. So I just think that's going to be the best resume when it all comes down to it. Nuanez Now 102.9 ESPN Radio. How about the Buck Buchanan Award? There was a couple nominees from the state of Montana, and also one guy I thought should have been on the list that isn't nominated. We'll talk about that on the other side. Don't shut that down. Keep it right here. ESPN Missoula.
In honor of our great nation's 250th anniversary, Mattress Firm is having its biggest 4th of July sale ever. Save up to $1,000 off top-rated Tempur-Pedic, or save hundreds off Purple mattresses and premium adjustable bases. Save up to 50% on top-of-the-line mattresses, all backed by their 365-day guarantee. See store for details. It's their biggest 4th of July sale ever at your locally owned and nationally known Mattress Firm.
Mattress Firm, where it's easy to get a great night's sleep.
Les Schwab changed the tire game more than 70 years ago. Today, we still believe you should get more from less. Like more hustle, less hassle. More of the best service around, less of the runaround. Because we include America's best tire warranty in every tire we sell. So you get more unbeatable warranty, less charging you extra. It's why we're more than proud to say, you get more from less.
Jewelry Design Center. We want to be your jeweler for life.
Nuanez Now on 102.9 ESPN Radio Missoula.
This actually reminds me of just such interesting memories. Nuanez Now 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hayden's your DJ for the day. I most times curate the playlist, but sometimes I just leave it blank and let him just surprise me. But so interesting. sometimes when you find something really cool and you're like on the front end of finding it, you sort of become possessive of that. So I found Tyler Childers, and I saw him when he was like in the infancy of his career, and just thought it was great. And then it's cool, quote unquote, cool to show people the new music and like kind of brag about like you're into this guy and you want them to hear him, and then they start to grow and grow, and you're like, well, they're transcendently popular, or they're transcendently talented, so it's not surprising they're popular, right? So then I saw Tyler Childers, and then he had multiple smash albums, and he went from playing venues of 1,000 people to playing Washington Grizzly Stadium. So then during that time, he had his much chronicled personal trials and tribulations, and then he famously and infamously got sober, and he gravitated toward maybe having a little bit less edge to his music, a little bit more like love song ballad types, like that one that Hayden just played, which is all fine and dandy. He's a great songwriter, he's a great singer. But I go to see him at Washington Grizzly Stadium after I've already seen him in a much smaller, more intimate venue years and years before. And I have actually sort of tepid expectations about this entering the deal. And then it all plays out, and it was a great show. And I can't say I was like disappointed, but let's just say I was so glad I saw him when he was in his rough and tumble, like almost strung out, just complete like throes of addiction, but also complete throes of just creative genius. I'm so glad I saw him then, because now the buttoned up version it's just not as much for me. But it was still a great show, Washington Grizz. And if I had never seen the first one, I probably would have thought it was even better. But I'll always hold on to that memory of the first time I saw him when he was a raw up-and-comer, battling his demons, but also in the midst of just such a unbelievable creative run. Good playlist today, Hayden. Thanks for doing it. Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio. You're missing the show. You can always find it on the podcast, which is available on all your various podcast hosting platforms. Please rate, review, subscribe. We talked about the Walter Payton Award. Let's talk about the Buck Buchanan Award quickly. Peyton Wing from Montana, who's a senior linebacker, and Caden Dowler from Montana State, who's the reigning Big Sky Conference defensive MVP and a senior safety who's wearing Montana State's legacy number this year, number 41. Those are the two gentlemen out of the state of Montana that are on the watch list. Jalen Jenkins from Eastern Washington, Mikey D'Amato from Cal Poly are also on the watch list out of the Big Sky. First time that I can remember in so long that there's no defensive linemen out of the Big Sky Conference on the watch list. The linebackers are Peyton Wing and Mikey D'Amato, and then the DBs are Caden Dowler and Jalen Jenkins. But there's almost always, if not always, a defensive lineman from the Big Sky on this list. I think that says something about recruiting, development, et cetera, in the Big Sky Conference. The team that's done the best job of recruiting and developing in the Big Sky on the defensive line is Montana State. And I think there's a reason that there's not a watch list person from the Cats. It's because they lost their four senior starters from a year ago. So that's one of the biggest question marks for MSU coming into this year. But Dowler certainly has to be one of the front runners as a guy that was a Big Sky Conference award winner a year ago. Wing, I think, has a chance to. I mean, he was a great player last year after transferring from Portland State to Montana. But I think he has a chance to make an even bigger jump, because he plays with a reckless abandon, and he is a very explosive player. But he was also playing in a very unorthodox scheme for the first time last year. And I don't know how to evaluate if Wing is, because some of his PFF, Pro Football Focus, grades were just above average, but not elite, and somewhere in the middle of the road for some of the Grizz defensive players last year. But I also don't know if the guys that were grading the film, if they're grading it just based on traditional fundamentals and run fits and things like that, or they're grading it based on what you're supposed to do in the Grizz defense, which is unlike what you're supposed to do in any other defense in college football. Well, the Grizz don't run that defense anymore. They run a way more traditional style. At least that's what we're being told. I think Wing is just a more traditional style guy. Like, if he's your weak side linebacker or your strong side linebacker in a normal 4-3 defense, I think he has a chance to make a big jump, because I think he can He can fit the run. He can tackle in space. He can tackle in the hole. And he was prolific last year. But a lot of times, too, though, the chaos of the Grizz scheme, you're either the guy making the play or you're the guy setting it up for everybody else to make the play. So if you have big numbers, if you're one of the two free hitters, you're going to have big numbers. If you're one of the other guys, which he was one of the other guys last year a lot of the time, you're sacrificing yourself so someone else can get the big splash numbers. He's just going to have more normal to good numbers for a starting linebacker for a good defense this year. So I think he has a chance to make a big jump. The other thing I was surprised by, though, for this watch list, I thought Cole Taylor had to be on there. And certainly I think he'll work his way on there as now he's a junior at Montana State. I've talked about this kid extensively. Been high on him ever since he was in high school, Great Falls CMR. But I just think that he was second team all-conference last year. But that was after not being a starter to enter the year. He got thrown into the lineup because of an injury, and it actually ended up being a huge boost for Montana State. Neil Daly, who he replaced, is a good player. And Bryce Grebe, who's also in the linebacker rotation, is a good player. But Taylor's an elite player. So you have to wonder if his lack of preseason hype last year influences his lack of preseason hype this year. Again, like I said earlier this hour, being on the watch list does not make you a semifinalist or a finalist for this award. It just helps the hype train behind it go a little bit. Well, he's going to find his own hype train because if he picks up where he left off last year, he's going to be lights out. I mean, the guy had 16 tackles in the national championship game. He looked like a man amongst boys, and Illinois State had a bunch of men. I'm just really high on Cole Taylor. I thought he was one of the biggest wow players that I saw last year. That when he got in the game against Oregon, when Daly went out, he popped immediately, and you're like, who's that guy? And then you keep watching him, you're like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? That guy looks like one of their best players. Is that guy Montana State's best player? I think they'd all tell you Caden Dollar's their best player, but Cole Taylor's right there. So he's not on the watch list right now, but he will be if things go according to plan before this season's done. Tons of Big Sky football talk in this show. Check it out on the pod. Tons of Big Sky football talk coming your way this week as well. We're going to do it in real time. The questions I have for both Bobby Kennedy and Brent Deegan at this upcoming Big Sky kickoff this upcoming weekend. And we'll have plenty more reactions from the British Open, the World Cup, and much more. We'll see you at 4 p.m. tomorrow. This has been Nuanez Now, 102.9 ESPN Radio.